Well, hello and National Poetry Month, Day 4. I spent the first few days talking about what poetry might mean or how to initially gain some access. And what would Poetry Month be without actually reading and sharing a poem? So I thought that's what I would do today for my little video, is share a poem that I came across yesterday, I believe. And it's by Limon, who is the United States National Poet Laureate. So for a quick lesson, poet laureates are amazing. The United States has a single person who represents as a poet laureate. Most states have a poet laureate, although there's a few that do not. And within states, some cities, like Santa Fe, where I live, has a poet laureate. And what is a poet laureate besides a fancy name? I have been working on a book about poet laureates, an anthology, a collection of national poet laureates. And so I've learned a lot about what a poet laureate is. Basically, in a seashell, is that poet laureates represent the interests of sharing educational, inspirational situations and circumstances where they're teaching and learning and engaging and sharing what poetry is or what poetry can mean to a community. So a poet laureate for a city, for instance, for Santa Fe, would write a poem and dedicate it to Santa Fe, and would show up at openings of buildings and ribbon cuttings and maybe special events where they're an appointed representative to that city or state or country. And their honor and challenge and opportunity is to educate and open up what poetry can mean or be or do within a community. It's an appointed position. Some states offer stipends, and it's a very cool honor to be in that position, to go around and open up poetry to people from all walks of life. So our National Poet Laureate, Ada Limon, has submitted a poem on something that I strongly invite you to check out. It's on poets.org, and you can sign up for free to get in your email every weekday a poem. And what this has done, it's exposed me to such a range of styles and perspectives and thoughts and words, poetry I would never have been exposed to. I see, and I want to add, I do not love every poem that comes into my email box. I do not read every poem that comes to my email box, but I do try to read most poems most of the time. And I'm so glad I do, because it exposes me to a huge range of poetry that I would not ordinarily have had access to. And that's really what it's about for me, is exploration, curiosity, connecting to work that I might never have had a chance to see. So for free in your email box every day, poets.org, you can sign up. And I strongly, strongly recommend you do. It's changed my life in terms of poetry. So I'm going to share the poem of the day that she had contributed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the poem, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to me, very briefly, just to give you a taste of what this is about in terms of accessing poetry. And I adored this poem. I thought it was just beautiful. Okay. Instructions on not giving up. More than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbor's almost obscene display of cherry limbs shoving their cotton candy colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains. It's the greening of the trees that really gets to me. When all of the shock of white and taffy The world's baubles and trinkets leave the pavement strewn with the confetti of aftermath. The leaves come. Patient, plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us. A return to the strange idea of continuous living despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the tree seems to say. A new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I'll take it all. Just gorgeous. I love this poem. So if you were to start reading a poem like this, you know, there's a lot of words in here and ideas that can become a little obscure. But if you really look at the feeling of this poem, there's so much here. At least for me, I feel hope. And I feel an acknowledgement of a long, cold winter. I feel the newness and springtime. And I love the descriptions that Ada uses in her writing to give us those feelings. So almost obscene display of cherry limbs shoving their cotton candy colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains. I used to live in Portland, Oregon, so I really relate to that. The sky always seemed gray, and springtime was always the time that it was raining. And the bright pink flowers would always contrast against the gray sky. So I totally relate to that. And when all of the shock of white and taffy, the world's baubles and trinkets, that's a beautiful way to describe flower petals, I think. Leave the pavement strewn with the confetti of aftermath. I also relate to that living in Portland, Oregon, because so many of those blossom trees would end up like confetti, pink and white on the pavement. There's so much here. It's just a simple poem. If you think about it, it's, you know, less than 20 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You know, it's less than 20 lines. And it says so much about human feelings of despair, disappointment, getting through a long, cold winter, the sogginess of it all. And I love this idea of patient plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us. I can feel the discontent turning into hope with that one line. A return to the strange idea of continuous living despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. So beautiful. It says so much. I can feel all the feels in those lines. And without even having to explain exactly what it is, I understand. It does go back to the feeling, which was what I talked about yesterday, is looking at poetry as feeling rather than an intellectual knowing of meaning, and trying to create meaning through what a poem evokes in us, what it illuminates for us, what it illustrates for us. And these words, with just a few words, I can feel a transition of how I felt leaving winter, which felt like a really long, lonely, strange winter, and the warmth and hope that does come with the sunny day. And just the description of the skin of green leaves says a lot. A new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. So you can imagine the leaf, you know, as it opens up, what that does. Just that image and that description says so much about what happens in the logistical, seasonal process of time and transition and continuity of seasons. I can feel the opening of that. So this poem really did feel very familiar to me. It felt very loving to me. It felt very honest to me. And I will use this poem in my workshops and retreats that I teach, because the language isn't complicated, and yet it's able to articulate and express the feelings of change and time and hope in a very succinct, creative, and visceral way for me. And that's what I look for when I read a poem, is how is it making me feel? What are the words that open up that expression for me? And if you're ever reading a poem without having to know what it means, find the words or phrases or images that connect with you and ask yourself why. What is it about those images that hits you right here in a very deep way? So Ada Limon is the National Poet Laureate. Her work is beautiful, and I would suggest looking into it more. But for National Poetry Day 4, I thought we could actually read a poem, go through a poem, and I hope you enjoyed this and see if it inspires you to write your own poem. Or if you want to, take a few minutes and see what this poem expresses for you or what it means to you. So that's it. That's today. I will see you tomorrow. Happy National Poetry Month. I hope you experienced something from this little talk.